All right, go for it. Great.
3, 2, 1. Perfect.
I love how the Zoom like defeats all of the sound making because it's you don't need that. That's not conversation. There you go.
Yeah. It's we probably also have all the things to make to dull the noise in the background turned on and things like that. Yeah.
The squashers.
Yeah.
The vibe squashers. Cool. All right. So everybody, this is welcome to another Pocket Podcast. And we've got the amazing Heather Gallagher, aka Camera Girl, aka probably lots of other things, who we've known for years and years. So, all the way back to JMU, and then on the scene, and as things bubbled with what we were doing, people that were around us also were bubbling things. Terry Harrison, shout out, like all of this stuff that we were doing with music and stuff and technology, and other people were doing it. There was like a thing. And then from there, Heather went out to San Francisco, and we'll dive deeper into this, and became one of the pillars of Burning Man. And that's where Camera Girl comes from, and amazing stuff. And now you're doing virtual immersive experience magic stuff, right?
Yeah. Magic stuff.
So let's start with the magic stuff that we see on the screen. So give us just a quick tour of like what you've got right there is not a background, right? It is all like
this is your
really
life. Me. This is really my hair. This is really my house. So the tour this is we're in my home office / studio. There's sewing machines and pegboards and things over there, but there's photos behind me that I took back in my Camera Girl days, and these are illuminated for extra juice. These are some of the Burning Man calendars that I produced. I produced about 19 of them, but I just put a couple on the wall behind me, and then there's just a pile of them over there. What else we got going on? Let's see, illuminated headphones, illuminated keyboard, gamer tech, hair's real. Okay, and then this is a Snap Camera purple sparkle filter that is my default Zoom and every other platform that I can use the filter on. I decided, as soon as this was happening, I was like, this is the party we're going to be at for a long time. We better have a lot of fun with it. So decided to set it up. What about you? What's hanging behind your you've got guitars situation normal.
Yeah. Guitars. I've got like books to seem like, like I know things. And then right up here is that's a picture of the old band house, like an aerial shot of Eldon Farms and the old band house. So,
oh my gosh. The things we shouldn't talk about that happened there.
Right.
Right.
Things that we perhaps won't talk about.
It was the 90s.
Yeah, indeed it was.
It was the era of the internet when everything became possible. Dude, okay, so Heather, there's so much to talk about, but there was a moment that we had. So Hooch had been a hit. We were on one major label, and that major label was getting merged into another major label. So we found ourselves essentially with an entire new executive staff and a new president of a label. And we were like the bastard stepchilds of this thing. And I remember we had to bum rush the president, our new boss, essentially, to basically like show him like, hey, look, like we're a good band. Like we have a hit, like, come on, bro. And I remembered he was so upset that 6 dudes showed up in his office. And he's my favorite executive to this day, Peter Kupke, because he was so flippant and so honest. I remember sitting down and looking at us, and he had come from London Records, so he was very like DJ oriented. And it was like 1998, Steve, 99. And he sat down, and he was just like, I've heard your demos, like just like this thing. And he holds up the E:. He's like, whatever this is, like, do this like internet shit, like whatever this is, like, just all you really need is a DJ and like $3,000 in this, just do whatever this is, and then basically threw us out of his office. And to me, that just sums up the 90s, right? Like we had a really great logo and we did crazy shit, and boom, there it is.
You know what this is? one of my prized possessions. It lives on my bedroom windowsill with the sun setting behind it. Love it. Love it.
Yeah, that's one of the big ones. That's
This is
limited edition.
One of 4 made.
Yeah,
I know. So incredibly touched to get gifted that at that moment in time. Yeah.
So Heather, let's I want to start with some historical context, because Steve gave a good general, connecting point. Like, we met at JMU and you were part of our crew, right? And, as we got on the road, you were working, doing some computer shiznit in Northern Virginia. And at some stage, I mean, because we were out on the road and you would like hear a rumor and then eventually see that person. But it was like, hey, Heather's like, she's out, she's going out west. And then like a couple years later, it's just like, and maybe we saw you and you're just like, yeah, I'm like involved with this thing called Burning Man. And we're like, sounds great, Heather's, you need a couple of years, back out on the road. So give us a little heads up, because part of what this conversation is Steve, Nate, and I making music together and really falling in love with like just hanging out again. And we realized that we know so many amazing people who've gone on to do such amazing stuff, and that we wanted to connect with that again. So like, you being part of that, tell us a little of your adventure that was happening while we were on the road, and a little of your path.
Gosh. Okay. So it must have been late. It was late 90s, probably like 97, 98, 99. And you guys, by that point, you were rock stars. We had already been on VH1 and MTV and videos, and then revamped videos and things like that. And we'd all been hanging out for a decade, right? So JMU was 88. And we technically met before school even started. At least Steve and I, and a good handful of others did.
Marching Royal Dukes. Let's just do it. Let's do the shout out.
I know we're gonna Dukes, go Dukes.
And how did you meet Craig too?
That's the thing, is we have to tell the how did you meet Craig story.
Yeah,
and then we'll go back to how did I get to the
we'll get there.
We'll get there. Well, so of course I met Steve and a few other players in the band, and so that was before college even officially started, because we got to go in early and get a head start on the hijinks. And then Craig, I met through, I think it was through AKL. It was through your fraternity. And so one of our mutual friends, Heather Robbins, was already a couple of years older and was a big AKL friend. And so we kind of got connected to the circuit of AKL folks. But I think you were pledging. And so somebody who was older, your older brother, one of them was like, will you come help me tuck in, read bedtime stories to one of our pledges, or our little brother, or something like that. I mean, that we already knew you, but it was like, that was definitely a moment in time when like me and my roommate came over and tucked you in at college and read you bedtime stories, as you do. And I remember, and you've definitely been, you're a dreamer. You've got imagination. You've always got some crazy idea, coming out of your mouth. I love you for it. And you were like, I'm going to start a band. And we were literally like, of course you are, honey. Let's just go back and continue reading the bedtime story.
Dreams.
Go to bed now. And then, came to be heard that you were the guy who like takes your guitar into the toilet, damn everything. You're just going to be in there playing no matter what, and just kept doing it. And then sure enough, it started tumbleweeding into a thing. I remember like one of the first invites, right? Wasn't it like a black and white E-colon with like fluorescent finger smears on it, or like something like, you remember that?
Yeah.
Something like that.
That was our first release. That was a cassette.
That's first cassette tape.
Yeah. Cassette tape.
Yeah. So it was like all of a sudden you had connected with the guys in the band, and then you were actually making a band and things are actually happening. But that first moment was precious, when we were like, sure you are. Sure you're gonna make a band. Yeah. So that's that.
So then we all get out of JMU, and what did you do? Did you go like, into the business world and do business things? Is that what happened to you?
Not only did I do that, I was wearing a suit and pantyhose to corporate America. We went to grad school and got recruited out of grad school, got my master's in computer science, and got a job with big companies doing telco consulting.
Boom.
I can tell you how the phones and internet works if you're really having problems falling asleep at night. I'll tell you a different kind of bedtime story. And so I was doing the traditional daytime corporate gig. And then, but then on, you know, nights and weekends, and when you guys were down at the Bayou or wherever, I would be down, you know, down there doing, you know, rock and roll at night. You know, I always tell folks I was one of your original sisters. You know,
yeah,
definitely. And then, yeah, and I also did, I actually have you guys on my LinkedIn. I actually, because I was doing your like database entry for, you know, people signing up on the email list and all that stuff. So something after the shows, I'd come back and put it into some archaic version of FileMaker or something like that. And help you get the mailing list up to snuff and things like that. So yeah, I was corporate girl, suit and pantyhose meetings, beige cubicles and stuff during the day, and then rock and roll on the weekends. And number one fan, or at least one, you know, in the posse of fans that showed up every time I could nearby.
So
and, yeah,
you know, in hindsight, this is an easy question to ask, but like, how did that feel at the time? You know, like how did corporate world feel? Were you like, yeah, I'm kicking ass. This is great. This is what I've always wanted to do. Cause like, obviously things changed at some point.
Yeah. You know, I look back and I'm always grateful because it was a great place to learn, and there was clear structure. And after, you know, I even went to grad school, because at that point you're like, okay, I can regurgitate and I can accomplish in this sort of structure. So I might as well at least go a little bit further and just capitalize on this momentum and tolerance at that time. And so I was grateful to have a place where I could learn the systems and accelerate and be successful, you know, where there's very clear, check these things and you get a reward, check these things and get a reward. But I always, you know, I mean, I told Craig this, you know, years later, that, you know, being with you guys taught me to always surround myself with the most creative mofos ever. And so, you know, that wasn't getting scratched at work, though I was able to find, you know, areas in my own development to be satisfied in. It was, you know, there became a moment where I'm on a call with 100 people around the world. All of them are probably wearing khakis and sitting in beige cubicles and making like 6-figure corporate tech salaries. And this was a long time ago. And the calls going on like all day. I mean, just this unbelievable bureaucratic process. And the topic of play was basically how to gouge like pennies from the masses to pay for this, like providing cell service out to rural areas. This tax had been put on the companies, and now they were figuring out how to implement it to basically take the money back from the masses. And I just was doing the math, and I was like, what the heck am I doing with my life and my days and my talents and my humanity and this one life that we get to, you know, give? I mean, just nothing, you know, hit it home as much as just that infinite bloat for this minutia thing to just take money from, you know, people. And I was like, there's got to be something better. Now, I didn't get out immediately. I used that relationship to get moved to San Francisco, and then ended up landing literally smack dab in the middle of the Burning Man community before I even moved out. So I always say that I got literally sucked into the heart of Burning Man before I even came to this coast, and the place I was visiting, and the restaurant that we had like dinner with, you know, the staff after hours for Thanksgiving was sort of the neighborhood hangout for some of the higher ups at Burning Man and the longtime Cacophony Society people, which is sort of a Bay Area instigators, creative, let's have parties and evening gowns and weird abandoned places kind of crowd, theater all the time kind of folks. Yes. And so when I came out, my very first touchdown in San Francisco was basically in the heart of that. And then I gave myself, you know, a year to move out, and 6 months later I had corporate America pay to move me out. I was still doing corporate stuff for another couple of years, traveling all the time, but that was my home base. That was my home posse out here. And they were deep in the Burning Man thing, to the point where they weirded me out. I was like, you guys won't shut up about this Burning Man thing. Like literally, I was like, you're kind of weirding me out, like back off.
Yeah, it's intense. So I would imagine most everybody listening to this probably knows what Burning Man is, but maybe describe it in your words, and also kind of like what drew you to it, and what kind of you said you got sucked into it, like obviously, yeah. Talk a little bit about that.
I mean, I'd never heard of it until I showed up and everybody was like, talk about everything about Burning Man. I was like, okay, this thing. And then a few things unfolded and I was able to go. But so Burning Man, is started as just a couple of guys and their sons building some wooden sculptures to burn on a beach in San Francisco. And then it grew over the course of a couple of years and hundreds of people showed up and then they were told they can't do that anymore because people don't like you burning things in San Francisco. It's a home thing. It's a home thing. Yeah. And so then they went out to the desert in Nevada in 1990. And so they had been going for 9 years before I even showed up in 2000. But it started as, just a gathering of people. And then they went to a place where they are free and then and more people. And then it became a bit more organized. And so then it became a city, a temporary city in the desert, a city built by artists for artists, where even if you weren't an artist before you went, you were one by the time you left, because it was just a place of permission and expression and creativity and against a giant backdrop of nothing, like a big blank desert surface that people would just build these monumental pieces. Now, that's the Black Rock City Burning Man. But then over the course of time, especially since I went and beyond, then it overflowed that because people were so incredibly touched and transformed and motivated and inspired by what they did and who they became, that then they started taking it home. So now it became a global cultural movement with several hundred regional leaders in 200 cities and locations around the entire globe. And then those people are doing their own community building, et cetera. So it went from a bonfire on the beach to a gathering to a global cultural movement. And now there's probably 75 different gatherings around the world, pandemic not counting. And a whole culture of folks that are just connected and creative and civically engaged everywhere. And shit's on fire. Can I say shit? Things are exploding. It's an absolute celebration of human creativity and human spirit, and just one of the most beautiful and loving things you can ever witness. And then you learn to embody it, hopefully, and then you take that back to your world, and then you decide, I'm going to have the purple sparkles every damn call I make, because why not be as creative as you can be every moment of the time? Have fun with it.
Totally.
Wow, there's so much to work with here, Heather.
I know.
We're gonna our shit will be sparkly soon, so they're already putting the magic dust on us. But a couple of prongs. I want to get on the creative stuff in a little bit, and then I know Steve has a few questions he put into play, and I don't want to take his agenda away from him. But so you started and got hoovered into the community, and you got more involved, and eventually ended up on the executive committee, right? Like you were one of the, I don't really know what are the titles, but it's I remember when you were
executive committee.
Yeah. You gave me tickets in 2006. And I remember showing up and you were coming out of your trailer, and it's just hard for anybody to fathom that you stand a city up of 50,000 people with services, security, all of that. And when it goes away, it's a leave no trace event. And you were rolling out of the trailer and you were dressed up and black vinyl, and you were like, hey, great, welcome. I got to go meet with the head of Google Maps right now. Right. You're doing tech stuff for Burning Man. You were the head of tech at the time. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is a whole different thing here. Right. It's what we started, our scene and everything, which is be creative, connect all the dots. Technology, yes, was that, but way more evolved. And it was really cool to see. So maybe talk a little bit about your evolution, because I want people to listen to this to understand how powerful your journey actually was, and the cultural vantage point that you helped sit at and influence.
While you're in the heart of something, just working to pay your rent and to make it happen and to figure out your own way, it's fascinating how, you can just be so committed to the cause that then it's only later or at various moments in time, we're like, oh, we're really doing something here. I mean, for me personally, I was still doing corporate, right? And then I weaseled my way. I made some time off that I didn't really have while I was still doing corporate. And I finally got to go to the Burn. And of course, you guys know me, I'm a Halloween baby, right? And I was, you know, I mean, who was always at the shows dressed up? Like, by the way, the only tattoo I've ever thought of getting was I'm with the band.
Nice.
And right. So I might do it someday.
You're super crafty too. Like that's another piece that we haven't even really talked about, but like you've always been like making stuff and like a range of things. So like that's just another piece of how you express your creativity.
Yeah, small scale sculptural pieces and masks and then eventually photos and the costumes, because being a Halloween baby. So when I went, I didn't exactly know what to expect, but I just stuffed like a cave girl costume and you know, just stuff I had literally left over from some of, you know, our shows and Halloween parties and stuff, you know, JMU or whatever that I still have, because as a Halloween baby, you don't throw any of that away. And then I showed up there and I got my hair braided. Had no idea. I just was trying to make it so I didn't have to deal with my hair, because you know, you guys actually know what I look like without dreadlocks, long curly hair. And then I was like, how do I put this away? And so I went and I got it African braided. And then I show up there, I put on a cave girl outfit, some big black boots, and I've got my braids and and I go out there, and I was like, it was just like stepping into frame on like the world the way I knew it could be. And so everything before that doesn't really make sense. All of a sudden, all the cave girl outfits and all those things and the little side projects and the creativity that I was just feeding on my own, all of a sudden just, I say, it swirls into this like soft serve cone where all the flavors you didn't expect turn out great. And suddenly you're like, this whole thing has evolved into a new platform. So it just made sense. It's literally like stepping into the frame where you're like, oh, this is a different set of people. This is a different set of rules. This is a bunch of activated, engaged humans that are just stimulating and inspiring. And the world can be like this, and I can be like it in it, and I can, you know, and I can step into myself, you know, and boldly go wherever I want to. And so it took a couple of years to fully transition into multicolored dreadlocks. I definitely did some like little colored streaks in corporate America for a couple of years. There's a whole journey about that. My hair, my camera girl. But you know what it does is it just taught me to unapologetically, you know, express and play and have fun with the life, you know, and to be in a place where not only was it encouraged, but it was, you know, it celebrated. And then, you know, the first time you walk out the door as a 8-foot tall bunny rabbit on a Saturday night, you're like, what am I doing? And then a couple of years later, you're like, why aren't all these other people doing this too? You know, like we can author our lives and ourselves. And if you're not hurting anybody, I mean, you don't get away with this, you know, like all the goth kids with all the cool hair were always the nicest folks, right? Like you pay your taxes, you fill out the forms, you're not mean, like, you know, like good people doing good civic, you know, things. And when you're not hurting anybody and you're showing up professionally, but then it became about being kind of on a mission to prove that, you know, that you could absolutely be a colorful, extraordinary, you know, interesting, vibrant, creative character and still be an absolute professional and a you know, a proud citizen. And because you can't get away with it if you're a jerk, right? That makes everything look bad. But if you're and also it's just good to not be a jerk. But there sort of becomes this principle of like, I'm not gonna have a shoplifting career. Like, oh, is the girl with the purple hair, right? Like, so by sort of stepping into this version, it also requires you to have a certain, not self-consumption or narcissism, but a certain awareness and consciousness about how you're engaging in the world so that you can continue to do this without people trying to make it not okay for everybody else. Totally. Yeah. So there's so much there, I know. And then now, you know, decades later, I'm in an airport, you know, in like the middle of the country someplace, and you see somebody's like middle, you know, grandma with like pink streaks in their hair, you know, streaks in their hair. And I think I might have helped that be possible just by unapologetically being me wherever I go and taking a little bit of Burning Man with me, you know, you hope.
Yeah. Just creating that permission, you know, and creating a community that is like one of its main missions is to like amplify that, you know. That's amazing. What we'll get to like your evolution in that. But like experience wise, what's something that jumps out from like either the first time you were at the burn or like one of the earliest experiences where you're just like, oh, this, you know, like this is all you talked about, like kind of stepping into the frame, like describe that, you know, sort of that moment.
Yeah, and it probably was one of the first moments on the playa. I hadn't actually yet put on my cave girl outfit. I did that like an hour later, but I went running out to the middle, which is sort of a giant plaza area, and it was evening and lights were in motion and stuff. And whoa, like you finally get the understanding of what is going on when you can kind of get that vista. And this golf cart buggy thing that with like giant glowing rainbow and some benches came kind of tooling by. And my friend who was with me was an old school, you know, experienced burner. And I just grabbed his hand. I was like, come on, let's go. And we went and we hopped on it and got a ride. And he looked at me and he was like, how did you know you could do that? And I was like, because it's here. Like, why on earth would you do this unless it was for everyone else to participate and enjoy? You don't, you know, like, you know, and he was just like, wow. Like, you know, like some people are very shy and timid, but to me, it was just such an obvious offering of creativity. Like, you guys know, the party's only fun when people come to it. Right. Totally. And it's even better. And that's what I also learned with you guys was, you know, I every show, every dinner, every time there's a theme, you know me, I can't resist, but I'm going to show up, you know, in that theme, if at all humanly possible, because not only is it more fun for me to feel like I'm a part of the experience and the entertainment or adding to the vibe. I know that it feeds you guys, right? When you'd look out and you'd see pods of us like, you know, super costumed out and like rocking out, like it's better for you. So it's better for everybody if you participate. So I just kind of made that leap of if this is here, we're definitely going to participate with it. And I wanted to talk a little bit because Craig had asked sort of about what changed, you know, for me personally, and some of it was permission. Then it became as I was getting into Burning Man, and I volunteered my way in, by the way, everybody. So I got laid off after 9/11. They called me back a month later, and I was like, no, I'm not. You know, literally the head of the muckety muck SBU of corporate such and such was calling me, and I was like, we don't have anything to talk about. And I lived on peanut butter and jelly. I negotiated rent reduction. I sold a house. I mean, I did everything I could to buy myself time. Meanwhile, I was knocking on the door at Burning Man, volunteering and taking photos and doing some other creative things that were good, and I get paid for them. But they weren't going to like pay the rent yet. And I just kept volunteering and kind of being there and working my way into it. But it was a couple of years of like, what am I going to do with my life? I can't go back. And this is the only thing that seems like it's at the moment in time where I could really pour my passion and feel like I was, you know, giving all of myself and really making a difference in the world. So I just wanted to make sure to speak to that, because it wasn't like it instantly just happened. I had to show up and make gestures and diagrams and resumes and volunteer and keep poking people and telling them I was available, and then some things clicked, and then I stepped in as head of technology, but only after producing a calendar and doing a bunch of volunteer work for a couple of years, and so I had a reputation established. Yeah. And then stepped in, and it wasn't instantly like, boom, you're on the executive committee. We didn't even have an executive committee for years, but I was in charge of a function, a major portion of it, what had to happen, and all of that evolved over time. So sometimes the magic happens, and sometimes you got to push for it.
I think thank you for highlighting that, because it's I work with kids in education now, and I've been guest lecturing at JMU for the last, I don't know, 12, 13 years. And, you know, our story is we worked and worked and worked, you know, 200 shows a year, all of that stuff. And we weren't getting rich. We weren't even close to getting rich. We were just barely paying the bills. I think our first like salaries were like $100 a month or something like that. I mean, it was crazy. And we all lived together in the same house and just made it work. But that idea that like that's how you get to where you want to get, is you find what you're passionate about and then you just do it, you make it work. And that's, you know, it's fun to look back from success and be like, you know, but like what got you there. And this is something that like every time I talk to kids at JMU and the kids that we're working with now, it's like find that thing, like find that thing that's at the perfect center of what you're good at and what you care about and what you love, and do that. Just keep doing that. You'll get better at it, and you'll get to a point where you're valuable. And at that point, then you get to do what you love and get paid to do it, you know? And I think that's just such a key lesson. And maybe for adults too, like, you know, it's not too late, but like, do what you love. Like, life is not long.
And I'll add to that and say, sometimes people feel like they only have to be one thing.
Yeah.
Right. So does that mean that because I went to college, I'm just a technologist? Like, heck no, right? Because I was also a seamstress. So, and I always tell folks, like, you got to get good at a thing enough to, like, you know, sustain, but then also don't be afraid to really, you know, dream big and do these other, paint and draw and play music or sew or rock collect or whatever, right? Whatever these other things are that are interesting to you, because then you never know when those. I was a perfect combination of, like, Halloween baby, photographer, technologist, you know, et cetera. These things that I was doing in different parts of my life, and then they swirled together to be completely relevant for what then became the next level up. And so I always tell folks, you know, don't think you have to be one thing, but definitely find ways to take either the one thing you love or the couple of things that you love and then combine them into something. And that's the magic too.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So another thing too that I really love that you said is your reputation, and that you spent time volunteering and making yourself useful in a pretty extreme environment, because setting up and tearing down and being at Burning Man is a total ordeal. And so the fact that you went there and proved, because it's like, oh, it's Burning Man, it's wild, it's creative, but what it is like, it's industrial level badassery, highly executed by amazingly talented people who work together as a team on a world-class level. And so you made, you know, you really invested in your own reputation, and someone said, hey, you know what, that's valuable, because, you know, what little time I've spent in and around that scene and knowing people is just like, it's no joke. It's like, look, we don't, and I'm sure that the road is littered with people who thought they could be helpful and tried to be helpful. And you're just like, you know what? Thank you, but like, we need pros.
Oh gosh, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, first of all, I mean, I'm eternally grateful for my colleagues and peers and you know, producers. I mean, it takes thousands of people to make that happen, and yet it became this super well executed, you know, machine, and in this way, in like family, right? Just like you guys could take it on the road, and who's packing the truck, and who's chasing the trailer, you know, things like that, where you felt but you also, you know, could like get, and then you get on stage, right? And you're in this super tightly coordinated, except loose family kind of thing, but you know, everybody's going to do it. And there's something extremely powerful about having a group of people who are so passionately into it and bringing whatever capabilities they have. So while yes, the core folks, I mean, so highly functional and such a thing to pull off, like truly like ballet, watching us build a city and heavy equipment and this and that. And I love it when a plan comes together and like making efficient use of heavy equipment time. And yeah, it's harsh environments, but I was doing it in hot pants and big black boots and pom-poms. But so at the same time, it's a super well executed machine, but also and really profoundly interesting to watch what happens. And I was blessed to do it for 20 years. But then also so many folks who did want to show up, there's this huge volunteer community. So if somebody had something to offer, no matter how, you know, whatever, you know, fringy, or maybe it wasn't mission critical, there would be places where you would try to make room for them. Wasn't as easy in tech because you don't give everybody who shows up like root access to your servers. But in terms of, do people want to show up in the off season and paint or sew things or whatever the process, whatever they had to offer, it was very much about trying to make a place where everybody could contribute, not just from the production side, but that's the whole thing, is that the content is user generated content. So even if you're not doing it for the org, you might be making your own theme camp, and it might be stellar, it might be a debacle, but you were trying and you were participating and you're of the thing. And that's what makes it so powerful, is because everybody's in.
Right.
You know, a couple teeny, very rare occasions of people who couldn't play nicely, you know, stuff was just off and had to be told, you know, please don't volunteer. I mean, it took a lot. It took a lot, a couple over decades.
Let's drill down on that just for a second, because I think that's important. And it's something that we experienced pieces of as a creative organization ourselves, where in a creative organization, you've got lots of creative ideas spinning around, and you know, I like my ideas. I think my ideas are great, you know, and Craig likes his ideas, and I think in some cases with us writing music, sometimes we got to a point where it was almost like too democratic or too permissive, because what ended up being created was like this, like, it's funny listening back to songs like Acid in Your Eyes, let's say, and how crazy, and it's fun, you know, but it's like listening to it now is just like guys, come on, you know, like just dial it in enough for somebody to hold on, you know. It's like this bucking bronco of music. And I think so there is that piece of it, as well as the vibes piece of it too, where it's like being able to play nice with other people. And I think that's super important to like kind of, you know, unpack a little bit.
Yeah, I always tell people, especially when it comes to Burning Man, don't confuse the container for the contents. So I mean, you're creating a place for just this effervescent, overflowing, literally explosive humanity to create and express and experience. To do that requires a really solid container, you know. So even though it felt like the Wild West, we had hospital and streets and rules and teams of people to help you if something goes wrong. And so sometimes that requires a kind of rigor and a kind of structure that, and when you're dealing with federal agencies, that you can't really compromise on. So a lot of the organizational processes are very bureaucratic, or they've been, you know, in place for so long, and you know, and you're so dependent upon the same players that there's a lot of inertia, and some of that's beautiful and some of that's frustrating, depending on if you're the new person or the established player, you know, all that kind of good stuff with legacy. But then what you're doing is creating the place for the creative folks to also you know, throw their acts together. And these massive art projects were made by people who were artists, but then it turned out they were leaders and they were community developers, because you're not building a 50-foot woman, you know, wooden this or that or the other and lighting it on fire without a bunch of people helping. So even though you might have had the first vision, then you become a person who has to have volunteers and other people. And sometimes they're just helping you execute your vision. And sometimes it's a big thing where there's a way that everybody's adding their little pieces to it, but you have to be super clear on who's driving, where's the room for the creative jam session, where is it somebody's doing the solo. And I mean, it's a whole big personal development program at that point, right? Who's in charge, whose vision is it, where can you get creative, where can't you? And much like music, if it's not good, everybody's going to see it or hear it. I don't know, I mean, how did you guys handle it?
Poorly. And awesome at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really tricky one, Heather, because you know, we were 20-something-year-old young men, and it's a bunch of egos, and you know, and everybody, like, one of the hardest things is everybody's bringing all of their hopes and dreams to a project that doesn't necessarily work with all of their hopes and dreams. And you know, one of the things is by the end of the band experience, we had enough relationship conflict that we couldn't afford to have process conflict, right? Process conflict allows you to have better output. But if you have relationship conflict and you just can't get to the process conflict because everything's relational. So it's like, oh, none of the, oh yeah, well, you know, it's like, oh, just talk about a chord progression, you know? So I think that, you know, we worked through it the best that we could, you know, and it's just like we all made mistakes. Like I made a lot of mistakes as a songwriter, as a leader at times, you know, and we learned a lot through pressure, you know, and it's like, it's a hard question to answer because we did as best as we could do under the circumstances, especially with a name like Everything, where in hindsight, what it really was is that we had a creative community. I'm actually trying to create a little nest here in my hands. It was a creative community of 6 musicians and 3 road people and a management team and a circle of friends. And we all experimented by saying, okay, yes, like, let's just try to handle everybody's input. And on a musical tip, it was hard because part of what happened is that at different times we had different kind of writers, so the sound would change, right? So every couple of years somebody would show up and be like, is this they look like the same guys, is this the same band I just saw at college 2 years ago? Like, yeah, kind of not. And that's okay as an experiment. It's harder to build a sustainable long-term audience with that, but in the long run, like, Randy and Adam are managing huge acts. You know, like I saw Odessa a couple 3 years ago, and I was watching some of their visual stuff, and they're at the forefront of what's happening. And I was just like, oh, wow, like Randy and Adam, we were all part of this. This is a much more advanced version of what we were doing back in the 90s. There's a lineage there, right? And just knowing that you had the same spirit that we had, and you've gone out and, you know, went through Burning Man. Now you have a bunch of projects you want to start on. So I think it's bigger than like how we handle the songwriting process. And part of what's happening right now with this podcast and me, Steve, and Nate working together is to rematrix that process again, right? And to say, well, how can we come back together so that it's a collaboration and we understand how to collaborate, because we're mature enough to understand what that is. Like you said, like who's driving, who's the leader right now, who has the vision, where can you be creative, where can't you be creative? Because, you know, in art, parameters define the form, right? Like you have to have limitations on something, or else it becomes like ether, which is okay too, but you can't put that on your wall, or you can't communicate that and say, oh, this is a play. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. It's a play. Great.
Yeah. Some constraint. I mean, and the one thing that they all have in common, at least, you know, the band and Burning Man, is a bunch of creative people who had their own ideas, but were also really committed to a picture bigger than themselves in the end, right? And that's definitely one of the things, you know, that I took away continually was, it's never been about me. I was always just in service to the thing and having fun with my stuff as I could along the way. But even when the processes, the bureaucracy, or the artists have their challenges, every single person, okay, maybe there's 3, but I'm like, everybody's in love with this thing, even that they love hate it sometimes, you know, but they're so into it for the bigger picture beyond themselves that it then forces you to figure out a way through. And like with the band, you know, it's things change over time and stuff like that. Of course, I, as a longtime friend and follower, love it, you know, because it's extra edges and new hooks and new signatures against what I already know. But even in your times of challenge, the show must go on. You know, you had people like me out there who were there for a good time, and you're like, we're gonna get it together, kids, and we're gonna go out there and do the things that we know how to do and work it out for each other and for this bigger thing. And that's a powerful thing to be a part of. So many people never, and even going back to marching band, right? So Steve, I don't remember if you were in the year, this is such a geek out moment. I don't remember if you were in the year when we went to the Silverdome. You might have already. Remember that?
It's one of the epic moments of my life.
Epic moments of my life too. And how, I mean, and Craig, if you don't know what we're talking about, and even if you do, well, I'm going to tell you about it. So we were on tour, maybe we were doing like a marching band national championship thing. You know, so this is the echelon of the echelon of the echelon. And we were sort of the house band in the showcase piece. And so this was the Marching Royal Dukes, go Dukes. And that's a 325 capable musicians and visual performers, right? I was a flag twirler, and so they had done their competition, and so they were all in the stands, plus all their families. Like it was like 30, 40, 50,000. It was the entire Silverdome or 3/4 Silverdome
was, it was like a rock concert. Yeah,
it was like a rock concert. And so we go out there, we cover the entire football field, spaced out, and we start facing away from them. And we play the song, the 2001 Space Odyssey theme song, right?
Yeah, I'm getting goosebumps right now.
I know. I actually pulled it up before we got on here. I was like, "Is that the name of that song?" And then it slowly ramps up. And then there's this count, and we all just turn, and this really slow count, and then and just horns up and just blow these people's faces off in like this. I write Goosebumps in this pristine super amplified moment of just precision and group work and big picture dynamics and delivery. And these people just lost their minds, just freaking out. And, you know, and that was, and, you know, decades of a decade for me, 8 years of marching band. And, you know, I'm sure you too, like that commitment to a big picture and being willing to to be the pog when you need to be the pog, because it's far better when there's 350 of you blowing people's faces off than for you to just try and be your own thing. Like, I mean, that is an extremely important lesson and an extremely important experience to deliver something like that to humans on that scale.
Yeah. Yeah. Find that thing that you love, and, you know, find that pod, that community of like-minded people that are doing that, and then like dig in. And that, yeah. The other great thing about the Silverdome, just on an audio perspective, was like, normally we were outside. And in fact, when we were in band camp, there was like the first 2 or 3 days of band camp where the 300 musicians could be inside, and we would practice in the convocation center back then. And then the brass players would get their chops. Like, they would get to a point where like it was too loud to be inside. We would all go deaf if we were practicing inside, and then we would have to be outside. So the Silverdome, because it was enclosed, was loud, and the sound that we produced in it was just like intense. And then you combine that with like, you know, 30,000 people on their feet, just like, it was like the first rock show that like I ever went to, where like I was, you know, part of the performance. And it was just like this, you know, that's one of the defining moments in my life where I was just like, I want to do this, you know.
That's on my list too. Is definitely one of those moments that's crystal clear that there's just such power and something, and something there is bigger than all of us. But when we're all in together, you know, beautiful moment.
Yeah. Also sprach Zarathustra.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Zarathustra, the Christianity god out of Persia, I do believe.
Zarathustra. Yeah, that's the official title of that song. I'll let you pronounce it. Do it one more time.
Also sprach Zarathustra is I think it was done as a German composer. Who did
Brahms?
that?
Brahms.
It was
Strauss.
Was it Strauss?
I got it up on a window over here on YouTube. Strauss.
There you go. Yes.
Ding, ding, ding.
That you know, and Steve, I'd love to you know, I realized that I put my saltiness on how we processed our songwriting scenario, but maybe you could put your spin on it as well, because
you know, I was thinking, like, you know, a really good question to ask would be like, what are your top 3 criteria for good creative collaborations? And then like I was trying to think like what mine would be. I think one is like you've said, Heather, is like the basically removing your ego, or removing the part of your ego that has to be like the one or the right, and you're in service to something higher. You know, you're in service to the group. So that's one. I think another one is a kind of communication that can address the stuff that needs to be addressed, but that it's done in a way that doesn't damage relationship. So kind of back to what you were saying, Craig, with process, but that we call it KISH in Light the Music. It's feedback that is kind, specific, helpful, and honest. And it's something that I'm super proud of. It was created by a teacher who worked with us, but that's part of what we're teaching kids is this like really good constructive feedback and this way of communicating.
So important.
And I think the third one is this, at least in music, and it might be in life, but the ability to kind of be in that. For music, it's like to listen really, and to be in that moment of channeling it, you know, where you're not like, oh, I've got this idea. It's like, it's just coming through you. And that can happen. My favorite thing in life, in the world, is jamming, is making music in the moment, improvising. And what that requires is everybody that's part of it to be doing that thing in that moment, which is letting go of their ego and just like tapping into the music, that living thing that you're creating. And so I think that it's hard for me to describe it in like more of a process way, but like at least musically, that is it's this crucial thing of like everybody sort of like being in the flow together.
Word, Steve.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, I know we'll get to this in a minute, but the software I later went to work in with augmented reality, creating holographic worlds, just a tangent, but it was kind of like it was created up in a way, so it's sort of like a Google Doc, except it was in 3D holographic worlds that we were in together, co-creating in real time, making live updates. See if you can even wrap your brain around what I just said. Putting a headset on, standing in a world, seeing 3D things around you, and then being able to collaborate on it. And I used to tell folks it was like holographic jazz, man, where everyone's adding things and moving it around, and then somehow, sometimes you're like, who moved my dinosaur or whatever, but usually it just ended up, this thing would evolve over time as that people would shape it, and it was kind of everyone riffing and adding their own element to it. And that moment when you're engaging with something and it's no longer about you, it's no longer about it, you're just kind of channeling something, and or collectively things are emerging. That's another beautiful part, is just seeing what arises out of it.
Right. So that listening or watching or just like paying attention to this thing and stepping back out of the, I need to put something in that, like just like appreciating it. And that it's funny because like now that we're getting a little older and at least speaking for Craig and myself, the like yoga and meditation and sort of all of that in it, that's just that's the thing. Like when you're letting go of all the, like this stuff, all the chatter and all of the like, oh, I want it to be this and that and this is the story I'm telling right now. Once you let go of that and you're just like in it, then it's like, whether it's music or life or like child raising, like it's things just like, that's the way to do it. And so, yeah, let's talk about this now. Let's talk about like creating virtual reality jazz.
Tell us what you're up to now. Let's get into the
well, I'm actually up to something different now, but that's worth at least a visit. So
let's talk about that, because like I don't even understand that yet.
I know.
I like to think of myself as somewhat techie.
It's super cutting edge and sci-fi and awesome. So, when it was time to leave Burning Man for a little while, and I did a lot of big initiatives and strategic things and wrote stuff, multi-year plans, and made a lot of noise about some things, and as only somebody who loves can really do. And then I was looking out in the world going, what on earth could be as interesting as this? I mean, Black Rock City and Burning Man, I mean, literally shit's on fire and exploding and blinking and phenomenal, like what could be interesting? What do you do after that? And then I started, I looked into creative technology and transformative technologies, like things that support meditation and yoga and those kind of practices, and immersive technologies. And so like virtual worlds, and really fell in love with it because it's still evolving. It's a generational thing. Headsets are now only becoming available for, at certain price points that make it accessible. But to truly create entirely new dimensions out of light, I mean, and to either take people into entirely new worlds, which is virtual reality, right, where you're completely taken out of this world and you're brought into a new one, or working in augmented reality where you're still in your world, but then holographic or additional content gets added to it. Like this is a form of augmented reality where I'm still in this world, but you've got extra stuff, right? Augmenting your reality. And this is, I've been giving keynotes about this too. I mean, this is one of the new creative canvases for humanity. And people now are playing games and Fortnite and Minecraft, and they're world building and sharing and having concerts in these spaces, and people are connecting there socially, and they have characters that they dress up, costumes. I mean, they're entirely additional meta universes that we are inhabiting together and creating content and stories and experiences and games for. I mean, wow, here we are. Like, remember when I started studying computers a long time ago? Finally, we've gotten to like the good stuff. right? Where it's fair. And then it's the company, the startup I was working for about a year and a half, had taken a game engine and taken 3D holographic headset stuff. And we were making humongous 3D holographic worlds you could explore, not just look at, but you could like touch things. So we'd create these fantastical gardens with all art sculptures and things, and you could walk around on them. And if you went over and poked a mushroom, it would dance and make noises. And the audio would change based upon where you were in experience. And you could poke a bubble, and then you could finger paint, and you could see, I mean, this is gorgeous. Just to, and we made it super gorgeous and sparkly, but even if it's for something boring, like teaching people like surgical procedures or whatever, like, dude, you're playing with holograms. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And collaborative too, right? Like it's like you were saying, like a Google
ours
Doc.
Ours was
Yeah.
Most of the technologies was not that, didn't foster that kind of, of course, then version control becomes a real thing, but when everybody can make changes, but you get there, you figure out how to do that. But that was just, so it's fantastic. Here's this new creative canvas, digital worlds, immersion, and, using this technology for fun things, but also practical things, but also, meditation, not just escapism, but supplementing what people's options are for therapy. There's a lot of now VR and AR assisted like therapy for PTSD. And being in an immersive like holographic playground was the closest thing I'd ever witnessed to being out in Burning Man at night. Right? One of my most quintessential, beautiful, happy places, standing in the middle of Black Rock City, the Burning Man location, just with everything lit up around you and in motion, and just like standing in the middle of it, just like charging like a crystal on the edge of the universe. I highly recommend it. And then now to be able to do that in my living room with a headset and to have things in motion and light and all that. I mean, just poetic technology became available. And so I went and I did that.
So cool. And is that startup still around? Is like, if somebody has a headset, like what's the name of that?
The company is called Enklu, ENKLU, props to them. And they actually, now I helped them for a bunch of this, created some of the largest high throughput immersive entertainment for like consumers. So this stuff was used in like aerospace and corporate things and repairing oil wells and that kind of stuff. And then they took this technology, the Microsoft HoloLens, which was they were like $5,000 and $3,500 a pop. I mean, not ready for most of us to own. And they said, we can bring this to the masses, and then put in a bunch of fantastical content, and opened a big immersive experience in the heart of San Francisco. Then we took it to some shows, then we opened our own venue, and it's actually open again right now in downtown San Francisco during the day at a thing that's showing like an immersive Van Gogh at night. So it just needs a big open space. And now people are going down during the day and putting headsets on and poking mushrooms. Like, isn't that wonderful? But and we did something at Outside Lands for a cannabis company, and for Sprint at another thing where you can learn about 5G, and you could just walk around and do things with your eyes, do things with your hands, do things with your mouth, and have these worlds interact. But yeah, that was Enklu, and I think they're doing pretty good. They're actually working with some immersive entertainment folks I can't talk about yet, but
dude, it's what I've described Light the Music as is like my dream for what it could be is basically like Ready Player One for music, where like I'm Steve Van Damme in real life, but then I go into this world and I'm like DJ Methuselah, and I make sounds with blocks of ice, and like that's my thing. And you're in this like sort of virtual music industry creative space, and that it sounds like we're getting there. And so I better
so we're there. So things are possible. Yeah. Okay, there's so much that's possible now. So first of all, people can now do like 3D live volumetric capture performances and pipe you into virtual worlds, right? So imagine if you're a performing dancer, singer, and you don't have to go anywhere. You can just kind of do your thing at home on a stage, and it gets captured and then gets fed out to all these different things. So now you're kind of bilocating.
And that's, wait, okay. So volumetric is what?
Volumetric capture is when you're like 3D capturing somebody's
Your whole thing.
A thing, people or stuff or objects, right? Instead of just getting a flat image of it like these, you're getting something that has the depth and dimension that you can go around and under, and that has, it doesn't have solid form, but it has shape, right? It looks like there's a thing there. So you're capturing something in 3D. Other thing that's now possible, so that kind of thing is happening already. Artists are doing things in VR. Marshmallow did a thing in, I think, Fortnite, et cetera,
that was huge.
There's a couple other folks who've really embraced it. There is now technology, and this is also coming out of Microsoft. In fact, one of the founder of Cirque du Soleil, who I've come to know, is working in this space because it's one of the few things that's interesting to him right now. They're taking some Cirque du Soleil content to this platform, which was a Microsoft platform, and combined with AltSpace, which is where there was virtual Burning Man's last year, and another one coming up again. Super fun to go to Burning Man and fly. By the way, Van Dam, we can do that. I'm so sorry we haven't gotten you to real Burning Man, but we get you a headset or just a laptop, and you can fly around a virtual one.
Yeah, either way.
Right, but Craig, imagine Burning Man but with flying.
Woo!
Yeah, like for real flying, not just I think I can fly. So this is a lot of levels. So that platform that's like a socially shared virtual world where you're kind of an avatar with very lovely blinky eyes, actually. And then you're hanging out with your friends from all over the world, and you're basically standing around shooting like you're in the same room together, like same clowns, different circus. Like here we all are, if they're hanging out at Burning Man or in a virtual world together. They have that where you can do it on a 2D screen. You can do it from your laptop. You can do it in a VR headset. And now you can do it in an augmented reality headset, that HoloLens. So you could also, participate in it like in holographic form. So if I had my holographic headset on, I would see you guys there and your avatars in hologram form. If you were at a computer, you would see both of us in avatar form on your laptop. And if Craig had on a VR headset, he would be immersed in a thing with us as avatars. So we're like, and you could pipe in real world 3D captured live performance happening. So people could be at a live show, they could be VRing into it, they could be 2Ding into it, and they could be projecting it into their space in holographic form all at the same moment. Did you follow that? Because that's crazy.
That's crazy. That's
crazy.
That's wild. Like it's funny because like I have had this perception of myself that like I've kind of been keeping up with that stuff, but obviously I haven't, because that's
it was my job for a bunch of years.
That's sick though, and it's interesting because like it feels like the VR wave was like coming for a long time, and then like I think that one of the big challenges is like the devices being at the right price point where it's democratic and accessible, but but like the stuff that's happening right now, I mean, that's mind blowing. Like the what you're able to do, and just like 5 to 10 years from now, what that's going to be for like just daily life. My son's 17, and I'm blown away by like just his like whether it's the PlayStation or Xbox or whatever, like what that's really like both sound and visual wise, but then also like interactivity and just like they're in it all the time, right? They're in it all the time, and they're just hanging with their buddies because that's their social platform. Especially during COVID, where it was like, that's safe, and that is your social interaction. Yeah, it's fascinating, and it's a generational thing. I mean, the hardware is still coming along, and some of what I'm telling you about is just popping through in terms of possibility. But that means that the big companies have probably been able to do some of this for a year or longer, because they don't announce it until they've got it like ready to talk about. But it's absolutely fascinating. And I went there, and again, I've moved on to something else I'm happy to tell you about in a minute, but I was also like, I had created this, helped hold space in this fantastical, otherly parallel universe that is Burning Man, right? Where the rules are different and the characters are quirky and the costumes are epic, and it's not like this planet. And I was like, who's holding space and making the rules and deciding what content we're, immersing ourselves into, or is being kind of injected in our worlds? Like, what a tremendous opportunity and what a tremendous responsibility. Like, I have zero interest in these shoot 'em up
zombie games, though
Right.
I get that there's a place for them and all that. It's not at all how I want to spend my time. But like, who's making the rules? That the people who push technology are it's the porn industry, it's the game industry, it's sports. Like, I was like, okay.
And music still pushes.
And music, absolutely. Yeah. There's beautiful progressions in music. It's not well happening. Yeah.
Steve, do you want to I would love to hear because Heather told me what she's doing now.
What?
And it's equally awesome. And so
That's
Heather,
not...
do you want to what?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to catch up.
Yeah, well, we're currently fundraising, and so there's a lot of NDAs flying around and investor calls and things like that. But it feels more like a matter of when versus if. Like people love it.
So choose your words carefully.
I am. We are creating a new form of live in-person entertainment. In the form of a large-scale art touring immersive experience that kind of combines rock and roll touring, Cirque du Soleil touring, Burning Man, and large-scale art in a way that's never been done before.
Wow.
And music and audio and so it's a digital elements, physical elements, lighting elements, audio, environmental creations, all tied, all brought together into an experience.
And interactive, of course, right?
Yes, can be varying degrees of interactive depending on how COVID-y things are at the time, but we'll definitely be bringing some of the best of all those places together. So that's going to be fun.
So very diplomatic of you. It's that DC people are good at keeping it tight. Those NDAs. I
gotta be careful. There's a chance maybe it won't happen, but it's gaining a ton of momentum, and then hooray! And then I'm gonna get my butt kicked for a long time, you guys.
Yeah, that's the
again,
thing. It's like,
again,
right? Like that. Be careful what you wish for.
Nah, it'll be good. You just keep pulling together a lot of awesome people and trying to plug in everybody's exceptional talents and abilities and get them excited about the big picture.
Right? Just like you've been doing, which is, it's kind of cool just to kind of like wrap things up. But like, your whole background, everything that you've done has all like kind of built towards this point, and it keeps evolving. That point keeps evolving as you add skills and add experiences. And so now you get to this next level of like, okay, now my wheelhouse is this. So now this is what I'm doing and what I love to do. And it's like that goes back to that thing that we were talking about early on, which was, your sweet spot is the, is the epicenter of your experiences and the things you love to do and the things that you're good at. And that's, like, you're nailing it, like it's really inspiring,
Well, it goes back to hanging out with you guys so long ago and being in creative processes together and witnessing yours and learning, to be a part of it and to express myself and to always surround myself with the most creative and colorful people ever and to be one of them. And then the rest of it is just getting organized and figure out what to do together. So, I mean, you guys, taught me to never settle for anything less. And I'm super grateful. And God, we had such a good time and will too continue to have a great time. But, that's a great catalyst for me to get out of the straight East Coast world and come do some of this stuff is being surrounded by you guys for so long.
I did get texts while we were talking on this phone. I got texts from Fairfax, Herndon, Annandale, Reston, and a few other locations. They all texted the cities and said they're ready to have you back at any time. Let her know, bring it back. We got to play.
Wait, isn't there a show in October?
Yeah,
October 16 at the
Thank you. I'm there. I'm there. I told everybody I was like, I'm coming back for that. So that's gonna be it. So warn them all, I'm coming.
So and also we'll have to keep talking about how we can be some of the pioneers of virtual, like magic interactive music and creativity worlds. I'm so all about that. Like I'm no joke. let's talk. Because there's
Yeah.
there's the stuff that Light the Music has created, which is, you know, sort of like a 2D, you know, iPad interface of,
Yeah.
you know, of music creation, which is
Yeah.
visual and sound. But then there's like, you know, all that stuff. So super, super excited about all that.
There's always more to go.
Heather, we want to talk with you again on the podcast because I feel like I want to have a whole podcast just to talk about music and Burning Man, right? Because we didn't get to that part. That's a huge one. And then at some point when you're ready to talk about your current project, which I think if anybody knows you and was listening, you'll know exactly what the project's going to be because it's an obvious evolution for who you are as a person. I have faith in that.
We'll take it. Yeah, I'd love to come back and hang out anytime with you guys. We can talk about everything. We can even get into some of those stories we might not shouldn't share.
Steve and I need to improve our virtual ground game here, right? We're not bedazzled in real time at all. We're like, you know, gotta work on that. So that's on us.
Onward and upward.
Okay, that's a challenge for next time then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for being one of the creative, amazing people in our world. That's it's really, really awesome to catch up with you and just, I mean, it's inspiring. Honestly, that's what you've done and where you're at right now is just like, yeah, that, you know. So
thank you, my brothers. I love you. It's you inspire me too.
Woo! Steve, you ready, buddy?
Take us out.
We've been doing an atonal intro and outro. So therefore, do it, Steve-O.
You've been listening to the podcast.
Ooh, AI edited you out. You tried to do your oohs and it went,
see? Even see, I was trying to do the ooh to like get it in there, but it's still.
We need that bell again, Heather. Zoom said 9.
Yeah. It's like it once it knows what it is, it's like,
oh, it's okay. You gotta like turn your original sound off or on, or we'll work it out. It's okay. Something to aspire to.
That's right. Like that's
ding, 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 ding.
Talk to a few of your friends, Heather, and tell them to stop turning the damn bell off.
Right? Make some calls.
Okay, I love you guys.
Love you too. Bye.
See you later.
See ya.